Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking time to join us for today's Business Power Hour as we continue our Business Power Hour series here at the Greater Waco Chamber. Let me begin by expressing my warmest thanks, our warmest thanks to our sponsors of our Business Power Hour, First National Bank of Central Texas as our presenting sponsor, and Spectrum Reach as our gold sponsor. And as always, we simply could not do it without the folks who support us, our business community, and we thank you so very much. Let me also remind you as we start moving into the webinar that there's an opportunity for you folks who are participating today to ask questions. So please feel free to provide us with your questions as Commissioner Alvarez and others are making their presentations, and then we'll get to the Q&A portion of the webinar here in just a few minutes. Let me begin with a few very brief introductions, and then we will turn the program over to Commissioner Alvarez. It's my great pleasure to introduce Commissioner Julian Alvarez. Commissioner Alvarez is the commissioner representing labor with the Texas Workforce Commission. And I think some of you may have had an opportunity to spend some time with him when he was in Waco a few months back. What we learned back then is that he is a high school and college football official. And he says that he assures us that he's not made any mistakes when he's called games here in the greater Waco area. So he is also, by way of background, professional background, he was a professional economic developer for a period of time during his career. And he is one of three commissioners. He was appointed by Governor Greg Abbott to serve on the three-person Texas Workforce Commissioner. Commissioner, we're awfully pleased to have you, and let me continue to make my way through the introductions. Also with the commissioner today, we have Jeanette De La Cruz, and Jeanette is the commissioner's chief of staff. Jeanette, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then we're glad to have you. Thank you, Jeanette. And then we have some local folks from our local Workforce Solutions Board that's joining us. Many of you who are participating today will know these folks. We have Jose Palacios, who is with us, and we have Bernice Gonzalez. And so the commissioner is going to make a presentation, and then we're going to have some other folks weigh in, and then we'll go to Q&A. So again, my warmest thanks to all of you for taking time to join us as we continue our webinar series. And Commissioner, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you for the invitation to address your members and others that are maybe participating. I just wanted to take this opportunity to kind of give you a high-level insight of what the Texas Workforce Commission was doing, and also an opportunity for us to answer questions. As you referenced earlier, we do have Bernice Gonzalez, Jose Palacios, and of course my chief of staff, who's got years of experience in the Unemployment Insurance and Benefits Department. And so I first of all wanted to inform all of those that are participating today that I know that folks are frustrated. Folks are frustrated because they haven't been able to get through. They feel that that we're avoiding calls and that we may not be answering questions that they may have. But I can tell you that that's the furthest from the truth. I wanted an opportunity today to share with you that our Texans, and at least our goal here at the Texas Workforce Commission, along with our local workforce boards, our main goal is to make sure that anyone who has unemployment insurance benefits or any of the other benefits that have been recently rolled out, that they get them. We want folks to have money in their pockets, and we wanted to have it quick. We have provided our workforce boards opportunities where many of them have been working from home, and matter of fact, some of them had already been doing that prior to this. The technology has certainly been important to all of us. I know the folks there at the local workforce board where we're at here in Waco has done an extraordinary job of answering questions, and have actually even set up their own somewhat call center. And speaking of call centers, we have call centers. As you know, we had 4 call centers. At one time, we had 4 that were designated in different parts of the state, and which, by the way, speak English and Spanish. We now have call centers. We've got additional contracts with call centers that are assisting us. Recently, we've asked the House members and the Senate members to provide us with volunteers from their offices to offset some of those calls and to assist us with their constituents. Many at one time were calling us about concerns regarding resetting a password or or getting a PIN number or resetting a PIN number. And so we've been able to educate and get folks that are working in the Senate and House to assist us with that. We now have multiple call centers around the state. We've extended the hours of operation, Matt, from the traditional working hours to now 7 to 7 in the morning to 7 in the evening. We've also now have 7 days a week, with the exception of Easter Sunday. We were open in some locations on Palm Sunday, and so our operations have increased. And again, this came from the overwhelming number of calls that we had been receiving. Just to give you an idea, we did provide Jessica and your staff with graphs. And so you'll see that the call volumes that we received during Hurricane Rita and the number of claims that were actually being submitted to the agency during Hurricane Rita, Hurricane Ike, and of course the floodings that we've experienced, and hurricanes and tornadoes and some of the other natural disasters. And this is a great example of what I'm talking about. So you can see back in 1/12 of 2002 when we had the 9/11 attacks and with the number of claims that were coming in. And of course, you can see here the Great Recession of 2008. And then of course, what we've experienced in Hurricane Harvey and some of the other natural disasters. And you'll see here on March of 2020, how it spiked directly straight up. And so you can see the number of claims that the agency has been experiencing lately. Just so that you know, we've already paid out over $1 billion worth of claims in just a short period. We have received more calls in the last 18 to 20 days than we did all of a year and a half of claims that were being submitted to our agency. So that just gives you an idea of how overwhelmed we've been with calls. And again, I know this causes frustration to many, but we do our very best to address those questions. I know the local workforce board there at the heart of Texas does a great job of addressing many of the questions that were brought forth by many of your members regarding, the various programs that are out there available. And I know we'll get into that a little bit later, but we have the regular UI benefit, the 26 weeks that they qualify for, and this is the chart that I know that you all have as well. So there's been some questions on if I'm a contract worker, do I qualify for benefits? If I'm a 1099, do I qualify for benefits? What money that is being distributed by or sent out by IRS, how is that going to come to my home? The PPP program that was recently rolled out, and of course we heard last night that there's a second wave of that funding. That specifically is done through the Small Business Administration. There are opportunities where our agency's initiatives or some of the resources that we have complement what the PPP does. And I'm glad to see again that Jose Palacios is there because he's very familiar with that program. And so, I know that what we really want to do here is answer questions from our members, those that you represent, Matt. And in a nutshell, I just want you to know that we do our very best, both at the commission and at the Workforce Solutions level, to address all of your questions, all of your concerns, but we're still open for business. I know Jose and Bernice are working on programs where they're still awarding grants to institutions of higher ed. I mean, we're still in there listening to our business community, figuring out ways that we can train their workforce, avoiding furloughs where we can put our shared service program to work, where Jose and his team diligently work hard at making sure we do everything we can to avoid shutdown. So with that said, Matt, that's kind of what I wanted to do in a nutshell, because I know that many of your members have questions and we're open to answer those at this time.
Great, Commissioner. And hey, just for the sake of those watching, my name is Rick Tullis, the current chairman of the Greater Waco Chamber of Commerce. And
Yes,
Matt and I are going to work kind of tag team here, asking questions. We are watching the live Q&A, so if you do have a live question, now would be the time to post it. Also, just through the last several weeks of us having different conference calls with different industry groups throughout the community, we have gathered questions that we've got a list of that we will ask those if we don't have any, if we're run out of the live Q&A questions. So I'll start off. We'll throw out the first one here. This may be a technical question, and there may not be enough information here to answer, but we'll let you take a shot at it.
Okay,
so,
yes, Chairman.
this person's asking if there's a Texas resident who's a U.S. citizen that has worked for a foreign company that is not based here in the U.S., is that person eligible for unemployment?
We would have to probably look at a couple of different factors to see where they performed most of their work. The question like that, we would probably have to defer to our tax department. There is a chart on our website. If you search under location of services, it's a chart that kind of guides an individual through various questions to determine where they should file for unemployment benefits. If the company was reporting, sometimes these companies will report wages for an individual to their home state. So it's just going to kind of depend, and we would have to look at that claim individually.
That's a great question. Chairman, that's a really good question.
Thank you. We have another question from our participants. The question is, we are a part of the shared work plan. However, I have had some employees that were initially monetarily ineligible and have been told to reapply due to the new quarter. How do I need to have these employees reapply due to the specific shared work plan application process?
So that's a great question. I'm going to ask Jose Palacios, who actually is an expert in the shared work program that we have there in the heart of Texas. Jose?
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, so on that question, we've had that come up, and then, the shared work plan is supposed to capture everybody that you send in on the list that you send to the shared work department. So when that happens, the last conference call that I was on with TWC, we were told that if they've filed a claim, they don't need to file another claim. They're sorting through there and going through and finding these folks that are monetarily ineligible. So that's the last advice that we have. And a couple of people that have called me have said, go ahead, email the shared work plan or the employer info mail at the commissioner's office representing employers, and just ask that question directly to them. That way they can get another answer to follow up with what we know already that they've told us so far.
Hey, Matt, if I may add, I think that the shared work program, again, the specifics on the eligibility and, of course, the details of that are on our website at texasworkforce.org, shared work program. I would, again, in my opening remarks, I had informed those that are participating that the last thing that we want to do is have everyone that a business overseas or have employed is to let everyone go. And so an opportunity where these individuals are cut on the number of hours that they work from full-time to somewhat of a part-time status, they still qualify for unemployment insurance benefits. So we want the employers to know that, because that's really important. So rather than just let everyone go, there are options that employers have, and that is maybe reducing the hours that they're working, and then certainly having these individuals apply for unemployment insurance benefits. If they have something like this in mind, we ask that the employer provide us with a list of names of all of those that will be participating in this program. So it makes it easier. So whenever we're answering a question, it's not just one individual, it's going to be a list of individuals that will be able to assist on one call. So that's a great question, Matt. And thank you, Chairman, for bringing that up.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Kind of as a follow-up or part of that question, one of our viewers is wondering about how the chargebacks will be handled, and I would say that in general, just all these programs, I've heard different things about how that will affect the chargebacks to employers. I would say, and I would open that question up a little bit to go on, hey, what's the short-term impact, and can you project the long-term impact of what's going to happen with those fees?
So I'll start off by answering that, and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Dela Cruz. Because of COVID-19, obviously the Workforce Commission and the commissioners have taken action to protect our employers as well as the employees. And so You know, our last discussion that we had from the dais was that they would be protected. And so we want employers to know that. I don't know if you'd like to add anything to that.
Sure. So any job separation that's attributable to COVID-19, we're going to protect the employer's account, whether there's a partial or total separation. And I think the same holds true for employers participating in shared work. Generally, shared work, the employer's account is charged. But in this case, anything due to COVID-19, I believe the employer's account is going to be protected from a charge in the short run and in the long run.
So in a nutshell, we're protecting our employers.
Thank you. Here's another question. Commissioner, please give us, as business owners who got the PPP loan, suggestion of what to do with the employees that already have unemployment and don't want to come back to work.
So any employee that's offered their job back and they do not report back to work, you should provide that information to the Texas Workforce Commission, and we will conduct an investigation into why the individual did not return to work. Because one of the eligibility requirements is that an individual applying for unemployment should accept suitable work. If we determine that that job offer was suitable and they refused it, then they will be held ineligible for unemployment benefits.
But the employer needs to stress that they were offering them employment. And I'll tell you, Chairman and Matt, there have been a lot of folks that have called us about that, saying, you know, I got people right now making more now than they did when they were working for me. Just indicate to us that you have offered them employment, and we should be able to, again, there'll be an investigation, but the last thing we would want is for an employee to turn down suitable work, as Jeanette referenced.
This is a resource question, but is there a good guide for employers to share with their teams on how to access benefits? Yeah, that you guys have access to. So
I'll start off by saying, I mentioned earlier about the texasworkforce.org website. It's up to date. It's got really good information. Some of your those that are on the call or online right now may have questions that we may not be able to address today, and certainly those answers could be found there. What we try to do, Chairman, is to try to avoid as many calls coming in when we know that some of those answers could be found on our website, and it could be tedious, and we understand that. But I can assure you, every board area, like the Heart of Texas, they have their website designed for the local region, and there are those that they serve. So texasworkforce.org is a really good site to go to. Someone's interested in childcare, if they're interested in shared work programs, all of that information can be there. And go to specifically on the main website, you'll see where it says COVID-19. And it's there's a bar that's in red. We ask that they go specifically if it addresses childcare, employers, or employees, and we can address that. I don't know if Jose or Bernice would like to add to that.
And we do have those links on our website on hotworkforce.com. So that is a good start locally here, and you can see the local resources as well as the resources that are linked up with the Texas Workforce Commission. You can see them there as well. And while I have the attention here again, just to follow up to that shared work plan, I was told earlier that we do have if there's a specific issue that you cannot get an answer to, as far as those folks that are ineligible showing 0, yeah, you could send them to us, and we can send that up through a list that we send up daily. So any issue with the 0 ineligibility, we can kind of take care of that. So send it to myself, or you can call the 254-296-5260. Is that correct, Bernice?
Yes, that's correct. Or you can contact one of us and we'll be more than happy to assist you.
Thank you, Jose and Bernice. Here's another question for our panelists and the commissioner. If we reduce our employees' hours, can we allow them to use their PTO to keep their full hours until they run out of PTO if we participate in the shared work plan?
So I'm going to let Jose take that first, since that's got some question there about shared work. But before you answer that, Jose, let me begin by saying that if an employee is off of work but they're using paid time off, we don't consider that a worker as being separated from their work. We consider them as being employed and not unemployed. If they are off of work without any paid time off, then technically they are considered unemployed and would be eligible to file for unemployment benefits. So, Jose, do you want to add to that?
Thank you, Jeanette. That's exactly right. So if they are on PTO, they're not, those PTO hours or vacation hours would count to the hours that they're working at their place. So the shared work plan allows you to reduce hours from 10% to 40% of any employee, at least two or more in any department or organization. So if you do that and they don't get paid, then definitely you can count that as hours that they're missing and go ahead, they can file for the remainder of the hours on the shared work plan. But if they do have PTO, then those hours would count towards the 60 to 90% that they're working. So definitely there's a little bit of I guess you could say, overlap there. So you cannot have the PTO count as not as unemployment time.
And please keep in mind that there needs to be separation. So that's good that they stressed that there's got to be a separation from employment.
Another question that's popped up. Some independent salon workers are being denied unemployment. Is there a specific reason why? And I'm sure there's probably more detail that you would need to know.
That's a great question. That's a great question. But, you know, beauticians, barbershop, Uber drivers, they all fall into that same category. So please keep in mind, I'll start this off and then I'll let Jeanette finish it off. But, you know, before, if someone wasn't fully employed in the eyes of Texas, we would not, they would not, I should say, if they were a contract or a 1099, prior to COVID-19, they would not be receiving benefits. So it was someone who was employed and obviously they were laid off or something came up as a result of them not being employed anymore, or there was as I said, a separation. But because of the COVID-19, these individuals, like the young lady or young man that asked that question, they would be eligible, but it's a different program, and that's the one that comes in from the federal government. But they would not be eligible for unemployment insurance benefit traditionally as what we've awarded in the past.
So Commissioner Alvarez is exactly right. So the way the system is set up, it was set up for W-2 employees, people that are in employment. So what's confusing a lot of these 1099 workers, these barbers and hairstylists, is when they go in and they file for unemployment using our traditional system, they get a message saying they are entitled to 0 benefits. That's because the system is looking for W-2 wages. But they do qualify. Once they get their claims in the system, we will scan the system for those claims that are what we call monetarily ineligible. Traditionally, we know those are the independent contractors, the 1099 workers. They qualify for what we call PUA, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, and they also qualify for the federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, which is the additional $600 per week that you hear people talk about. But there is some confusion, and we understand that, and we're trying to clarify that. So many times we'll have individuals say, I applied, but the system is telling me I'm not eligible. But that's what's happening.
So Chairman, if I may add, and Matt, we provided your membership and your agency, the chamber, with this graph. And so you'll see that this one is the regular UI benefits. And then of course, you'll see the extended 13 weeks that's on there as well. And that's it right there. And that is a very helpful guide right there. So if you would like to incorporate that in your website, I know that our local boards have that available to them. It's self-explanatory. We understand that there's new language like pandemic, emergency unemployment compensation. The one on the very left, as you look at the chart, is the regular UI benefits. And then, of course, you'll see if you're a 1099 and you had a question that was asked earlier, if a realtor can receive the pandemic $600, this is exactly where he fits in. So we ask that you share this, and this is really important. And again, this is all new to us. Before, we only had the regular, which was the far left, and of course, the new ones have come up as a result of the COVID-19.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. That could be very confusing, I could see.
Yes, Chairman.
I'm my company, we're in the construction business, and of course there's a lot of construction folks, especially in residential construction, that are 1099. So this all applies to them as well. So it's good to.
And keep in mind that a lot of our literature, or all of our literature, is both in English and Spanish. So I'm kind of glad you brought that out, and I think I mentioned that earlier with our call centers. We do know that there are people that live within areas of Texas that predominantly speak Spanish, and so this would apply to them, and we do have it in Spanish form as well.
Great. Yeah,
Commissioner, that is going to be very, very helpful. That's a very common question that we're getting. We're holding industry-specific conference calls, and a lot of our independent contractors and 1099 folks are asking that question. So thank you for clarifying that for us, and we'll make sure that we get that information up on our website and get that information out to our membership. It was very helpful.
Thank you, Matt.
Another question that we have for you. I have an employee who I had to furlough, but I'm going to need to permanently lay them off. I'll pay them accrued vacation hours and so forth. Will this affect their unemployment?
So again, that goes back to Jeanette's explanation about being separated.
So if they are told, we've got to let you go, there's no more work available, here's your check for vacation, they just need to report the vacation to us, that whatever those earnings are, whatever those wages are. And but if they are told you can use up your vacation time, and then after that there's no work for you, then it goes back to what Commissioner Alvarez was saying, in that there's no job separation yet until they run out of PTO.
Okay.
So that and severance and all of that is very important. That's very key. So I know there's multiple questions that we have here and that your members have provided us with in advance, and that seems to be the commonality. You know, I'm still paying them. They're still receiving, benefits from their sick leave. Until they're separated is when all of this goes into effect.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. How do these programs apply to people who were either part-time before the COVID-19 hit, whether they were a student or whatever, but they were just a part-time employee? And then what about those people who've gone to part-time because of the slowdown?
So students and part-time workers, they have to be aware that when they file for unemployment benefits, they have to be able and available to work, and they have to be available to accept any full-time employment. Any limitations on accepting the full-time employment is going to limit their eligibility for unemployment benefits, and they may find themselves not eligible at all. But individuals with not an extensive work history, like your students or not, or your part-time workers that may have not quite that monetary history, they can still qualify for the PUA, for the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance that we talked about earlier. That's specifically for individuals that are not monetarily eligible for regular benefits. So, so I would tell them to, yes, go ahead and apply, but just to be aware that they have to be able and available to accept full-time employment.
Yeah. So for an employee who had to go to part-time because of their whatever was going on in that business, they shouldn't have a problem because they were full-time, but then they went to part-time.
That's right.
But for someone who's only working part-time because of school or whatever, that's going to be the challenge.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
That's correct.
Matt?
Commissioner, do you still have time for a question or two?
Of course,
Doing
man,
okay?
anything for you or your members. I love going to
you.
Waco. Just
you.
remember not to boo me. And I just want to thank thank you for putting this together. But I'll share that before I close out.
The next time that we have you here, and we're really looking forward to that when we can all get together, I assure you it will be a very respectful boo.
Thank you.
So glad to
Thank
have
you.
you, Commissioner. Thank you.
Yes.
And this question may have already been asked, or to some degree, forgive me. If employees are rehired for PPP purposes and then laid off in 8 weeks, will the chargeback waiver and federal disaster unemployment still be available to the employer and employee?
So it would still be available so long as the program is still up and running. I believe one of the limitations, and you'll see on your chart for federal pandemic unemployment compensation, that's the extra $600 a week. The last payable week is July the 25th of 2020. So so long as that program hasn't expired, that laid off worker is still able to take advantage of that. Depending on the job separation, if it's COVID related, again, if the employer found themselves in a situation where they couldn't maintain their employees because of the impact of the pandemic, then their account should be protected from a charge.
Thank you.
Okay, someone who is asking, when you stated earlier that employers would be protected, does this include reimbursing employers?
So I believe that under the CARES Act, there's an opportunity for reimbursing employers to obtain a reimbursement from the federal government for up to 50% of their charge. So probably the best place to follow up with that would be our tax department and obtain additional guidance from them.
Great, thank you.
Another question. We received the letters stating our employees were given unemployment. Do we need to respond to the letter?
Yes, you need to respond to the letter, because if you don't, there could be an opportunity there for the agency not to realize that the person was separated due to the pandemic, and you may be waiving your opportunity to protect your account. You shouldn't just assume that we're going to protect your account. You need to respond to all notices that we send to you, but specifically the notice of the filing of the initial claim. The sooner you can get that back to us, the sooner for the laid off worker, and really it benefits the employer as well, because they don't forget to respond to it amid everything that's going on. So
that's a really good question, because somebody was saying, I haven't received any of my benefits. And so after looking at their screen and evaluating it, we saw that the employer had not, on a timely basis, had submitted the response saying that they had been let go or they had been furloughed as a result of the COVID-19. So again, like Jeanette said, it's very important that when employers receive these notices, that they do it and they submit it or reply as quick as possible, so that way their employees will get paid. There is a process. I mean, that's no secret, Matt, that there is a process where our goal is to get money into people's pockets as soon as possible. But it could take 3 weeks for all of that to happen. It's about a 21-day period, and so if you include weekends, you'll see that it's a little longer. But if we can get those notices as soon as possible, we're going to get money in people's pockets as quick. So great question.
Thank you.
Another good question. So can employers use the shared work program and PPP? And I guess basically they're asking, is it exclusive? Can you just do one or the other, or can you do them both?
So I'm going to turn that over to Jose, because I know what the answer is, but I know he knows it as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, they can use both the PPP program and the shared work as long as it does not overlap. So for a portion of the shared work plan that you're using unemployment, you cannot claim that also on PPP. So if that makes sense. So as long as they do not overlap, you can use both programs to help you through this situation.
And please keep in mind, there's another, it seems like there's going to be another rollout on this PPP as of yesterday. So, you know, for businesses to apply for that and continue applying for the shared work program that we have. And again, you heard from Jose, there's nothing wrong with doing both of them, but just be careful on how you use the money.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about that in my own instance. We did get funded for PPP, so I believe that starts the day the money comes into our account. So we've got that 2-month period. So you're saying we wouldn't be eligible for shared work until that 2-month period has happened. So it'd be later on this summer if we wanted to do a shared work program.
And you could do it at the same time simultaneously. And again, as long like you could do, you could pay them, you could use your PPP to pay for the percentage that they're actually working. Because again, remember the shared work plan reduces the hours by 10 to 40%. So for the 90 to 60% that they're working, you could use the PPP, and then for the 10 to 40%, you could use the unemployment. So you could use them simultaneously. You don't have to wait for the whole period. Again, as long as they do not overlap, then you'll be fine.
Gotcha. Good clarification.
Yeah, that's good. And we encourage all your employers to do that, you know, if they're eligible for it.
But if they're doing that, Commissioner, then I'm assuming that will stretch out the amount of time that their PPP is in place and helps to cover their costs. Might that extend beyond the 2-month time frame? Will there be any potential ramifications if that goes beyond the amount of time that the dollars were earmarked or will be made available to pay employees?
Again, those are SBA questions. I don't know if Jose has anything that he'd like to add to that. Just in the very limited conversations I've had with representatives, this question generally isn't brought up, which I'm real surprised. And just so that you know, Matt and Chairman, these are really good questions. These are really good questions. And I think that's why sometimes we have a delay on our calls, is because of such great questions like that requires us to do some research or to reach out to our SBA partners. So Jose, I don't know if you'd like to add anything to that, but that was a great question.
And it is a great question. Again, we can tell you about using the PPP and the shared work at the same time to retain that great talent you've already trained and acquired. But as far as the specifics on the PPP with the SBA, that'd be more of an SBA question.
So I'm sorry we couldn't fully answer that, but that certainly we could do something we can research, but we don't want to give your members the wrong information. And at the end of the day, that's not what we want to do.
Well, I appreciate that, Commissioner. And I don't want to confuse people as well. But there is a particular period of time in which you are supposed to spend those dollars. And it's my understanding if you don't spend those dollars within that particular period of time, then you move from a forgivable grant environment to a potential loan environment. And so we need to get a little bit of clarification on that. And hopefully I'm not confusing our participants, but we need a little bit of clarification on that so we don't put business people in a position where they may find themselves with moving into a loan environment, even though
that's really good.
So
Matt, if I may add,
loan, but it's a loan.
So if I may add, I mentioned earlier about this graph that you showed. So here it tells you when we expire and the benefits that we have control over. And as you know, when the federal government gave us the HR 748, which is the additional $600 for those contract laborers or those 1099s, it specifically identifies when those benefits end and how long they're good for. So this graph is important, specifically addressing when they end, when is the last day. Individuals will, if someone's applying today, please keep in mind that they're going to get the benefits of when all this started. So it's not just like from the day they applied. We want your members to understand that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's good clarification. Back on that that $600 a week. Was it the PUA?
The FPUC, or the Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation.
Right. And so I had another question about that, about if someone's receiving any unemployment, are they eligible for that?
Yes.
Or
Yes,
they had
and-
to have been full-time unemployed?
No, Chairman, so that's a good question. So if they are going to be receiving unemployment insurance benefits, and it could be as low as, I think it's $207, they can receive the $600 on top of that. And so when we first started this conversation today, there was a question asked that there may be individuals that are making more money now than they were when they were working with me full-time. And, what is the, is there an incentive for them not to get on? When we told you as part of the requirement for UI benefits, you have to be looking for full-time suitable work. And so in this particular case, just so that you know, and let me make some clarification. If an individual receives unemployment insurance benefits and he's on top of that going to receive the FPUC, that's going to be in the check weekly that we are going to distribute from the agency. So there's no reason for those to reapply or to call us asking us, hey, am I eligible for the $600 additional dollars? So that's a great question. So on top of the UI benefits that they will qualify for, they'll also be qualifying if they're a 1099 for the $600 additional dollars.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Another question, suggestions for reporting severance we plan to pay out over time.
If there's an employer that pays somebody severance, we would have to do an investigation to determine whether or not someone's going to be eligible for any unemployment. If severance extends over a period of weeks, then that individual may not receive any unemployment benefits for that time period. If the severance is just for 1 week, then it's not going to impact an individual's eligibility for unemployment.
Thank you.
Hey, we have an employer asking about receiving notices via email versus mail. Do you guys, is that an option? Is that something employers can select, or does everything go through snail mail?
Yes, so there is what we call it's on our website, and the employers have a portal where they can sign up and receive their electronic correspondence. It's called Employer Benefit Services, or EBS, and they can receive their chargeback notices there. They can receive claim information there. There is a similar electronic portal for claimants. We always encourage individuals to sign up and get an account so that they can receive their notices or any correspondence from TWC immediately. And they can check on the status of their claims or check on the status of any chargebacks or tax notices. So yes, there's something there, and we would encourage everyone to sign up for that.
Well, Commissioner, we've gone through a lot of questions.
Let me tell you, you have brought up some really good fastballs, and you've thrown out some audibles. And this call or this webinar was very informative to us, because we have seen that the folks that have been calling in are now calling in with more detailed questions, and that's really good. But what we want to just reinforce is that we can only control with what the agency has, and that is the additional benefits that are paid out, the $600 that is being funneled through us from the federal government. Please keep in mind that there is a additional pot of money out there that folks are receiving, and that's the PPP, and then also the IRS funding of the $1,200, and then of course the $24 if you're married, and $500 if you have additional kids, or all that. So we don't handle that, but you can see how we're overwhelmed with folks calling in asking us these questions. So we ask that those that are listening, we're doing our very best to answer every question that comes into the agency. We have the very best people working for us answering these questions that are very experienced, and we have excellent workforce boards. Mr. Billings there our executive director, along with Jose and Bernice, do an outstanding job representing the agency and doing good work. And so I just want to take this opportunity, Chairman and Matt, for allowing us to partake and be a part of today's presentation. We hope we were informative. We encourage you all to follow us on our Twitter account at Alvarez TWC Labor, Alvarez TWC Labor. And as a bonus, and I'm going to do this for you, Chairman, and for you, Matt, Jeanette monitors my Twitter account. We'll do our very best. That's our Twitter account. And we leave ourselves out there. So if you have a specific question that wasn't addressed today, email me at TWC, at Alvarez TWC Labor, and my Twitter, Alvarez TWC Labor, and we'll do our very best to answer that. Or you can also get in contact with Jeanette at laborinfo at TWC. Yeah, there it is. There it is. There's our information. They certainly can reach us there as well. So with that, Chairman and Matt, thank you for allowing us to be a part of today's presentation. And if there's anything else that we can do here at the agency, or I can do personally from my office in this capacity, please feel free to reach out to us.
Great, thank you for your time. I know that there's already some people hitting your Twitter account asking you to explain the pass interference call that you made last.
After further review on the big screen, I got it right.
You know, there's accountability. You got to be careful. So, hey, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your team and all they're doing for our community. I mean, it's public service, called public service for a reason. You guys are serving, and thank you in this difficult time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Want to tell our participants, thank you for taking part in today's webinar. As the Chamber, we hope to continue having more of these. Again, this is part of our Business Power Hour series, which is sponsored by the First National Bank of Central Texas. And our gold sponsor is Spectrum Reach. And we are thankful for those guys. Without them, we wouldn't have the resources to put on these programs. So thank you. That's it for today. Mr. Metters, you got anything else you want to add? I threw him a curveball. He thought he was done. But he can't take his mic off mute. So I guess we are done. So thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, Chairman.